WordPress generates a header and footer on every web page. Today, I'm going to show you how to remove the header and footer from a specific WordPress page just using CSS. Hi everyone, welcome to the WPQuickies series, bite-sized WordPress tips and tricks in 30 minutes or less. Hi, I'm Will Brown, WordPress consultant and educator. I help WordPress designers and developers get more clients and grow their WordPress business. Before we get started, make sure you hit the subscribe button and ding that bell if you're on YouTube and to get my latest video updates. Connect with me on LinkedIn as well if you're there, and if you're watching on the Facebook group, just give me a thumbs up there as well. You can always look at WP Australia as well, so wpaustralia.org. That's going to show you all the WordPress meetups that are happening across Australia, and there's also a link to our Slack group as well, where you can chat to us in real time. If you're a web developer or web designer who creates and maintains client websites, I've got the Ultimate Website Owner's Survival Guide, which is going to help you add some recurring revenue onto your business. So visit was.com.au if that is you. Let us know who you are, where you're from in the comments below. While we're doing that, the next in-person monthly evening WordPress Sydney meetup is on the last Monday of every month at 6 p.m. It's at the Microsoft Reactor offices, and that's right next to Wynyard Station. And this month, I'm going to be talking about compliance and WooCommerce, or compliance in website online in general. So come along, network in person with others in the WordPress community, and you might even have some pizza to munch on as well. Lastly, you want to fill out some suggestions for some more WordPress WPQuickies topics. I'd be really appreciative for that. I'll send a link in the comments there. Fill that out. Let me know some topics that I can do in maybe about 20 minutes with some time for Q&A as well. We've got Alan from Annandale. Hi, Alan. Welcome aboard. We've got Jay and A Barrow. Joe here. Hey, Joe. Nice to see you here. Thanks for joining me. And we've got Jean as well in the Central Coast, so some of our regular WP Quickie viewers. Thank you so much for tuning in. Sorry about the audio today. I'm using a different microphone. My Rode is giving me some feedback. I don't know why. I didn't have time to sort it out. So jumping on a little lapel mic here. This is great. It's a little Samsung one. It's been really good when I've been going about on holidays and stuff, just doing mobile presentations. So hopefully you can hear me clear enough. Okay, let's move on for today's presentation. I have got quite a lot of slides, so I might go a little bit fast at first, and then just see how we go during the presentation towards about 20 minutes. Okay. So let's learn about how to remove WordPress headers and footers just using CSS. Okay, so by default, WordPress outputs a header and a footer on all single pages across a website. This is the header from my willbrown.com website. So it contains the logo in the top left corner and the menu on the right. Under the squiggly line, that's not on the website, but under the squiggly line, this is the footer from the same website. And it contains a menu containing links about privacy policy, code of conduct, terms, acknowledgement country. And it's also got a copyright message at the bottom as well. So these headers and footers, they are generated across the entire site by default by WordPress. And that's just the way that WordPress works. However, if you are creating maybe a sales or a landing page, these headers and footers can become a bit of a distraction. Now, WordPress core has no easy checkbox options to remove or disable the header or footer when it's outputting single pages. So we need to find a way to remove these elements from our landing pages if that's what we want to do. Okay, there are several ways to hide a WordPress's header and footer on the single pages. The most common methods are these ones up on screen just now. So theme options. If you've got a particular theme that supports a particular layout, you get a common layout, which is a landing page layout or a full canvas or a blank layout. And that just means it removes the headers and footers and just gives you a blank screen to start on. So that could be embedded in the theme options. Then you've got your PHP theme page template. So bundled with the theme are different templates for your headers, your single page, your archives, and header and footer. So you could manually edit those pages in PHP, but you don't really need to be a developer to know what's going on there. The third option would be a page builder. So the popular page builders, Beaver Builder, Elementor, Divi, Auction, they all have layouts and options to be able to remove the header and the footer because You can use them to design landing pages very well. So you could use a page builder, or you can use the easiest, cheapest way, which is custom CSS. Today, I'm going to be looking at this option, the custom CSS, hiding WordPress headers and footers on single pages using that. Hey, Liz, thanks for joining us. And Alan's got a quick question. Most copyright notices contain a year. Yours doesn't. Is a year required or recommended? I don't think it really matters a year, particularly for that. As long as your content, your blog posts are year dated in the system, then you've got proof of when you actually authored that. I don't put a year in for that because copyright just means copyright everything. So I don't basically provide a copyright year for those. But that's a great question. Maybe I can put that in my legal talk I'm having at the WordPress Sydney meetup later on this month. Okay. So why would you remove the WordPress header and footer from pages? I mean, there could be a range of reasons that you might want to remove the header from pages, but the most common reason I've already outlined is to increase conversions in a landing page. Now, a landing page is a particular page on your website with a singular laser-focused call to action that you want the visitor to take. Any links on that page, they could be header, sidebar, footer, any sort of links on that page can lower the conversion rate or visitors taking action for that one thing. So the digital marketing company HubSpot, I've got a link on the screen there. They did some A/B testing with their viewers, with their website, and their data suggests there's a slight increase in conversion rates without distraction. So they removed the header, they removed the footer, and they tested their content over different types of contents like email opt-in, basic white landing page opt-in, and then things like single e-commerce landing product pages and things like that. And there's different conversion rates between them, but in general, we saw a higher conversion rate for pages that didn't have any additional links that people could go. So there's just one thing that people can click on, and that's it. So that's probably the best reason and most important reason for being able to remove your header and footer from any page on WordPress is a landing page. Okay, so how to locate the WordPress header and footer. I'll just make myself small again, and there we go. CSS targets HTML elements. So we need to be able to locate the WordPress header and footer elements in the code of the website. Now, these HTML elements are usually called bracket header or bracket footer, the angle brackets. However, some themes can define different elements for the header and footer. So we can't assume that these HTML elements, the header and the footer, named that way, are present. So fortunately, you don't have to trawl through the page source code to find all these elements. Most popular web browsers have a tool that you can use to find and navigate through a web page's HTML code. So you saw a sneak peek on the previous slide of Chrome's inspect element. Now, most browsers have something called an inspector, an inspect element tool for it. And it's super helpful for beginners to be able to find HTML elements on a web page and determine their class names and their IDs if they've got any associated with that. Now, the inspect element tool, it's available in Chrome, Microsoft Edge, Safari, Firefox. It's available in Opera to a certain extent. I'm not checked in the other ones, but those are the main browsers that people will use. So you have the inspect element tool on all of the big popular browsers. So you've got access to all that. Now, again, HubSpot have a great article on opening inspect element on each browser. So I'm not going to go through each browser. You can have a look at that URL in your own time. If you've got something other than Chrome, which I'm going to show here. Okay, so here we go. There are several ways to open the inspect element tool in Chrome. You might have done it accidentally in the past, but method one is from the three vertical dots, up in the top right hand of the browser, and then choose more tools and then developer tools. And then that will bring up the inspect element window. The second method is to simply hold down Control Shift and I, or Control Shift and C, or Command Shift and C or I if you're using a Mac. And that'll bring up the inspect element as well. Method number three is you can right click anywhere on the web page, and then you get the pop-up menu will come up. right down the very bottom of the menu is the inspect. So click on that, and then it will open up the inspect element window on that particular element as well if you right-hand click on there. Okay, so when the inspector is open, you can use the element select tool. So that's a little arrow pointing to the right-hand side window. It looks like a little rectangle with a arrow inside it. So you can click on that and then navigate over to the left-hand side. And as you move around on the left-hand side, you'll see the elements will be highlighted. So you know exactly which one that you want to target. Click on the mouse and it will take you on the right-hand side to that particular element in the HTML code. And then you can see the element, the HTML element, you can see any CSS, you can see any IDs associated with that. You can also do exactly the same if you go on the right-hand side and just click on the element and then click on inspect. It'll take you straight to that element as well. But the little browse tool is really, really useful for really knowing exactly which element that you want to target. Okay, so using the inspect element tool to find elements, you'll find the HTML element name and all the class names or the ID it uses, allowing you to target that specific element. So here we are looking at the header that I clicked on. So that's the previous slide here. So I used the little selector tool. I found the header. This is the mobile view of my website. I clicked on it and it's taken me to the bit of code on the right-hand side that determines that header. And this is just a zoomed in version of that. Now, the one that's highlighted is a div with a class inside dash navigation. Now, sometimes that's not the actual header. Sometimes you might need to follow the hierarchy up a few HTML elements to find the parent element you want to target. So in this example, you can see that div is highlighted with the inside dash navigation. If we look up the hierarchy, a couple, so first one we get nav, and then the next one we get the bracket header, that's the one that we want to target. So that is the header, which is outputting all the header stuff to the web page. Now, if we want to remove the entire header properly, we really should be targeting that parent element, not just that div that it's landed on. The reason it's landed on that particular div just now for when I clicked on the header is because that's the one that's full screen on that, and then the header is like a container behind it, so it hasn't had the chance to select the full header yet. And this is why sometimes we might need to look up the hierarchy. So look up from div, the next one is nav, and then the next one with that is header, and they're all contained within the header for that. Now, here's the HTML element that we're trying to remove. So it's header, and then it's got class equals site-header, and then it's got some more class names on it. But we usually try and take the first class name in that list as the one that we try to use to target stuff. Now, it's also got an ID. If you look along, it's got an ID equals masthead for that. So there's several ways of targeting HTML elements. We can target the element directly, so we can use the angle bracket and header. We can target it using the CSS class name, or we can target it using the CSS ID, or a combination of each. Though there could be multiple header elements in an actual page, you can have a header element within something else. So that might not be unique for that particular page. Class names are not unique either. So even though we've got a class name called site-header, site-header, that might not specifically be unique enough just to get rid of that one for this. But we notice that it's got an ID. So an ID equals masthead. And the rules of HTML say that you should only have one ID per element in the code. So you can be pretty sure that using the ID, you're going to target that just one element. So here's just a summary of what we've been talking about. So in the CSS, how to write the basic CSS. So we're looking at header. We could use header.siteHeader or header hash masthead. So in general, when we're looking at the HTML code, the elements, which are the ones in angular brackets, we just use their name in the CSS code. When we're using classes, we have a look at the class name. In this example, it is a class equals site-header. They become a dot. So you use a dot and then the name of the class. So in this example, we've got site-header in the class name. That just becomes dot site-header. And that means that in CSS, that means a class name. Similarly, with ID, we've got an ID equals masthead. That becomes hash masthead. So when we're talking about IDs, we put a hash at the beginning. Class views, we put a dot at the beginning of the name for those. So here's the final CSS that we want to use to try and get rid of our header. The final CSS is header, and then we don't put any spaces. We put a hash mark with masthead. We could just use hash masthead, but I'm being explicitly here. I'm saying I want the header that has an ID of masthead, so I've put them together. And then we've got our curly brackets, and then the CSS command or statement is display colon none with a semicolon. And what's that saying is that header with that particular ID of masthead, I don't want to display it at all. So that should remove that particular header, that one header from that one page. Now, I'll show you where to put the CSS a little bit later on in the slides. Okay, so targeting, I'm going to hide myself here. Targeting a specific WordPress page with CSS. Now, we don't want to remove the header element across the entire website. That's going to look a bit weird for our site, and it's going to, well, people won't be able to navigate through it either. So WordPress assigns a unique ID number for every post and page. Pages are just posts on your website. Now, you can use the inspect element to find the body HTML tag of the page. That's right at the start. So the body HTML element is close to the top of the web page source code. And all the stuff that's on your web pages are inside the body, like they would be inside a document in Microsoft Word. Your body is the content of the website. So everything is pretty much inside there. Now, in this example, the body HTML element is close to the top of the page, and it's saying body and then class equals, and then we've got some names of the classes: home, a space, page-template default, and then we've got page, then we've got page-id-2. That is the one we are looking for. Now, there's a whole lot of stuff going on in that body class, in that body with the classes and stuff. But the bit that we're concerned with is this page-id-. Now, that's a format that WordPress uses for every single page, every single post on your WordPress website. So you can navigate through your entire website, and on any page, you can right-hand click, do the inspect element, scroll up to the body class, and you will see this within the class page-id- and then a number. And that number is the unique number that WordPress stores against that post or page. So in this example, this page that I'm using, it's the home page for my website. It has the ID of 2. So if I went back into the WordPress dashboard, into the pages admin view, and then I hovered over the page number, you'd see at the very bottom, the link would be number 2, page ID number 2 for that if I was going to edit it. So that's what we want. Now we know that the unique WordPress post ID of this particular page is 2, which means that we can target just that page with our CSS code. So let's have a look at that. Let's get rid of myself there. Okay, so to target just this specific page with CSS, we would use the code body, which is the HTML element, and then a dot, because we're using a class name, page-id-2. So when we put it all together, the final CSS to remove the header is body.page-id-2, a space, and then we're targeting that header element that we want to get rid of, which is header with a hash because it's an ID masthead, in the curly brackets, and then display and then none. What that's going to do is that is going to just remove the header from just that one specific page with the ID of 2. Okay, so where do we put all this CSS? We've worked out what CSS we need to use. Where do we put it? The best place to do that is to open the customizer from the top admin bar and then navigate to additional CSS, which is usually the last section down the bottom, and expand that one there. What you're going to see here, so you copy the final CSS code into the editor window, and after you've done that, when you see the preview on the right-hand side, you should see the header remove for that. So I've got a little animated GIF at the bottom here. You can see me pasting the code in, and it's removing that top header, and then I'm getting rid of the code, and it comes back on for that. And because I'm just targeting that page ID with 2, that means that only that page is going to have the header removed. All the other pages will still have the header on that. And if you want to make that, if you've got that working and you're happy with that, if you want to make that permanent, then click on the publish button, and your CSS will then be saved, and then you can go into your live site and it'll be working for there. Okay, so you can repeat the process for the footer for your web page. So in this example, the inspector, so I've scrolled down to the bottom of my website. I've right-hand clicked on roughly the footer area, that's that gray area, and I've then clicked on inspect, and we've got the inspector window that's come up on the right-hand side to the correct space in the code. Now, in this example, the inspector highlights a div with a class name called gb-inside-container. Now, if you have a look, it's got a parent div with a class name of site-footer. I've got the arrows pointing to those. And that seems to be where the footer lives in this particular theme. So I've not got an HTML element called angle bracket footer in this particular web page. I use GeneratePress, by the way, for this, if you're interested in knowing that. I've probably got some sort of custom footer, which is why it's not using the footer element. So in this one, I've looked up the hierarchy, and then I can see that I've got a div class equals site footer. That sounds good enough to me. Site footer is very descriptive. I think that's probably going to be good enough just to hide that particular footer on the web page for that. So let's have a look. Get rid of myself there. So we only still want to remove the footer from the same single page, not across the entire website. So the final CSS code to remove the footer will be, and I'm using this body.page-id-2 because that's that singular page that I want to remove, a space, and then we're targeting that class name .site-footer, curly brackets, display equals none. And I've got a little GIF here that you can see. So this is me copying that particular code in here. And you can see that the bottom copyright is being removed, and then it's coming back after I get rid of the code for those. So same process for the header and same process for the footer. And just to get rid of that, really should be really easy to do. But once you've mastered the web browser's inspect element tool, targeting HTML elements with CSS and IDs is really kind of easy, and it's an easy way to hide WordPress stuff like header, footer, or anything from particular web pages. Now, hopefully, you've not found that too technical. It does take a little bit of getting used to when you're using the inspect element tool. But once you master that, then you can use that for things like, if buttons are particularly not have the proper color or the particular font, then you can right-hand click on that button and it takes you to the exact place, the exact style where it's set in that color. And then you know where to go to change it or override it in your own custom CSS. So that's it on Ruin header and footer, just using CSS. We don't need fancy plugins for that. All we need to do is use the inspect element tool and then add some CSS in our customizer, and that gets rid of the stuff easy peasy. And you can replicate that across any site, any page on your site using the particular page ID, the unique page ID for those. So if you've got any questions, you can jot them down in the comments and I'll try and answer them as best as I can. I can see another question in there I'll put up in a second for that, but I'll put my details here. This is me, happy to connect with you all the time. I've got a few websites. The one that I'm promoting just now is willbrown.com. So please visit there, see the stuff that I have there. Otherwise, please connect with me on LinkedIn if you haven't done so already, on Instagram, and follow me on Twitter as well. Now, there is a question that's not related to this stuff. And a Facebook user is asking, when will there be a WordCamp Sydney? It's a great question. I've got a few minutes left. So I'm happy to answer that in this live session. There's a few things to think about WordCamps in Australia. Let's roll it back from WordCamp and let's talk about meetup groups. So a couple of years ago, before COVID, there were about 10 meetup groups that were running in Australia regularly every month. And then COVID kind of decimated all that over the last couple of years. Before that happened, a lot of the WordPress meetup organizers have been pretty tired. They've been doing it for maybe 6, 7, 8 years, something like that. So there's a lot of burnout already happening before COVID. And when COVID struck, when the in-person groups couldn't happen anymore, I'm not saying it was an excuse, but a lot of organizers thought, well, okay, this is the time maybe to step back. So a lot of the WordPress meetup groups kind of closed down completely for those. And because we don't have any new people to step up as organizers, the old organizers, they've kind of stepped back and say, I've done my job, I've done enough, and we're looking for a new breed of people to come, fresh faces to come and start up the meetup groups. So we're not quite there yet. So I've rebooted the WordPress Sydney meetup group, just myself and a couple of helpers for those. But the other WordPress meetup groups across the country, they're struggling to get organizers to help boot them up. Now, if it's something that you think you like to get involved in, please do reach out with them. You can find them on Meetup. You can find them on wpaustralia.org as well. You can see all the meetup groups. Get in contact with some of those leaders and say you'd like to volunteer to help a meetup in person. And you can get involved. You don't have to do speaking. You can just be like a person that does greet people at the door, or you can help update the meetup page. That'd be great if you guys can get involved in the WordPress meetup community. Now, the reason I'm talking about meetups and not WordCamp is that in general, well, anyone can start a WordCamp Sydney, but in general, it's usually some of the meetup group leaders that decide to then put on a WordCamp in a particular city. So it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of organization. We don't get paid. It's volunteer. We're talking about probably about 1,000 hours to put in to pull off a WordCamp for those. So we're not quite there yet. We haven't got the meetups in place. We've not got the people coming, so we've not got the community there to advertise to. So it's really difficult to put on a WordCamp, which is a big endeavor. It's a 2-day, weekend-long at a particular venue. We've got event insurance. Event insurance as well is quite high at the moment because COVID could have different variants that could all shut down again. So there's that type of thing as well. But essentially, the community needs to be rebuilt again in Australia. So that's the first. We need to rewind from WordCamps, and we need to concentrate on the local meetup groups, build up the community, and when the community is at a certain point, then we can put the WordCamps on. So we might be 1-2 years away from another particular WordCamp in Australia. So that's a bit of a long-winded answer to your question. Hopefully that satisfied you. But please do, stay on the meetup groups, stay on the Facebook group pages, because if there is going to be a WordCamp, we will announce it on Facebook and Meetup, and you'll hear about it then. But probably not for a couple of years, I think, at least. Okay, great question. A bit out of context, but thank you very much. It was an important question, so thanks for asking that. Next week on WP Quickies, I'm going to be talking about WordPress updates. So how does WordPress update core? How does it update plugins? How does it update themes? And can you hook into it to update your own custom plugins? Yes, you can. Okay, so join me next week to talk about WordPress updates. Thanks so much for your questions. Thanks for being with me, and I'll see you next week. Bye.